Actually, I took a couple of our treasures from the studio and brought them home with me, so that I have a little bit of, our physical space and all the energy that is charged around that for the last 6 years. I have some of that here in my home studio during this interim period.
That's nice. I was wondering, okay, yeah, I see we are live. That's good. So if people can post questions on Facebook, and I'll try to read them from here. I was hoping you could start with, you had offered to do a centering for us. You told me you would, so.
Yeah. So let's just take a moment. I think really any conversation, anytime we shift into being with new people and into a new type of conversation, it's helpful to just take a moment here. So if you can, just let yourself land wherever you are. And whatever position that is for you, whether you're seated in a chair, on the floor, and just let whatever's connected to the earth really start to feel very supported. Let it heavy down to the earth, and at the same time, feel the earth rising up to meet you in this space. And gratitude for the earth for just holding so much right now. And as everything centers and falls down towards the earth and what's grounded down, could you feel the openness and expansive of the air around you? And could you take just a moment here to feel the front of the body and the back of the body? Feel the space above your head, above the shoulders, even out to the rib cage, and see if you could grow a little bit more expansive side to side here as well. Let the hands just rest wherever they are. And soften the brow, soften the space around the jaw. Even let the tongue just kind of fall in the mouth. And in this space, in your physical body, could you invite in, just for a few moments, just letting go of some of the things that the mind has been churning, and drop a little bit more into the heart space, into the feeling space. And this is hard to do these days. It requires a sense of trust and a sense of really stepping into a place of vulnerability. And we've been talking a lot in our practices that with everything that's swirling around us, giving ourselves to center and stay grounded, stay connected, is important now more than ever. And so connected with the earth here, connected with the sky above, because you just feel yourself, perhaps even just connected to the community joining in this conversation. And gratitude that there are people all over the world, literally all over the world, stepping into this place, being of service to provide yoga to everybody. And could you invite in some gratitude for self, for being here, for making some time for this? You're welcome to leave your hands exactly as they are, or bring them to prayer center, whatever is most meaningful for you. If you take a mudra that's special for you, with the hope and the wish that all beings be safe, that all be healthy, that all be happy, and that all may know peace. Let's just take a deep breath in together. And let it go. And you're welcome to join me for an Om, or simply let the vibration wash over you. We'll inhale to prepare. Om. letting the chin fall to chest, gaze softly at the fingertips. And then in your time, come back into this space, release the hands, flutter the eyes open. Hello.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. It occurred to me that maybe you could introduce yourself a little.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everyone knows you. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we haven't met yet, hello, my name is Kerri Hanlon, and I am one of the co-founders at Yoga Home. We are a community yoga studio in a suburban Philadelphia town called Conshohocken. So that's always fun, Conshohocken, or we call it Conchi for short. And, the studio has been around. It's actually, timing is really, really interesting. It'll be our 6th birthday tomorrow.
Wow.
And so, 6 years of studio ownership and several years now being involved with accessible yoga. So the first time I met Jivana was at one of the New York conferences, and we sort of had some conversation about what it's like in this notion of equity and providing access to yoga for lots of people, and kind of got hooked on the whole idea of it. I have a son. My background in really being passionate about the idea of making yoga accessible for everybody comes from I feel like everybody has a personal story. For me, I had a son who had severe cerebral palsy. And so seeing how the practice landed in his body and what really was helpful to help him bring the breath into his body and discover both, everything, the pranayama, the asana, and mindfulness to be a real healing modality for him. So I'm happy to be here. I'm a member of the board, and was happy to be invited for this conversation.
Yeah, and actually, maybe can you say a little more about that, working with your son? Because I feel like that was that's what really intrigued me, was about your way into accessible yoga and how you were doing yoga before he was born. Is that true?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've been practicing for, gosh, I used to say like over 20 years, and I guess it's like over 30 years now. So, and my practice has really been an on and off, but much more on for the last decade or so. And Sean had a really complex body, and so he navigated life with the use of a wheelchair. He didn't use words to communicate, used a lot of eye gaze to communicate. And I started getting really curious with some of the physical challenges, and he dealt with quite a bit of respiratory challenges in his lifetime. As I was going through my practice, and even just him being in the same room and sharing some of that, I was seeing him take on some of the benefits of the practice. So then I got really curious about it and started researching, so who's doing more of this work? And then I connected with Matthew Sandford and went to his training, and came back to Philadelphia and said, gosh, what can we do in our area to really be bringing this practice to more people? So we just got really busy with it, and it's everything from working with children with complex disabilities, adults with complex disabilities, being in schools, providing yoga for caregivers at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So lots of just different pathways to bring yoga where it's needed.
Mm-hmm. I love how you described him. How did you say, not using to communicate? Because I've heard that the term nonverbal isn't really appropriate, and there are many ways to communicate. It can be words, it can be with your eyes, it can be sign language. So most people have some way that they can communicate, and that came up a lot in my trainings recently when we were talking about consent. So I just appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Word choice, it's something. So I do adaptive yoga trainings also, and we always those word choices. And when people talk about getting started in this space, there can be so much fear around it of, I don't want to do anything to hurt someone, and I don't want to say anything that I'm going to offend someone. And there's so many different takes on language. And Sean's mom, I sort of had the nomenclature down of he's nonverbal, non-mobile, and then it's I got to shift all of that, right? So it's he may use a wheelchair to navigate his world, and he uses eye gaze to communicate.
Yeah, right. Use a wheelchair versus being in a wheelchair, something like that. Like those are really important. Actually, I mean, the language is something I find really interesting too, and there's so much confusion around it. But basically, people can decide how they want to refer to themselves and their abilities. So really, that's what you go with. You just go with what people say, what they want.
Yeah.
I know that wasn't our topic, but I just got excited by
Yeah.
that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I do think it's
Anyway.
an important aspect because it's pretty much how we started our culture at Yoga Home.
Mm.
Of to be for me, my reason for wanting to open a yoga studio was, I mean, for sure, I was seeking somewhere in our community to practice and build community, and wanted to create a space where everyone was welcome. Everybody felt like they could not only participate in the practice and physically access the space to be able to do it, but to feel really seen and heard and valued and appreciated and acknowledged and all of those things. That's so important to us.
So what was the timeline? So you were teaching, and then you started the studio. And was Sean involved? I mean, was that part of it? Was that you wanted a space that he could come to, or?
Well, the timeline is actually a little bit. I wasn't really teaching when I first met. I actually met Maura, who's my business partner. She had been my teacher, and so I was practicing with her. And the studio that she was teaching at was closing, and so sort of my yoga place that I used to go to connect was going away, and that was sort of it for a little while. And then Maura and I started talking about, so what would it be like for us to open a yoga studio, and what's our shared belief system? And Maura has always really done a lot of work in service for various communities. And so that became something that, we definitely shared that in common, and wanted a space where we could come together that had that service component to it in a really profound way. And tying it to the practice. I mean, that is part of the practice, right? Is that service piece, yes. For sure.
That's for sure.
So how can we, really became, how do we build upon that? And then with Sean and my influence there, initially it was Sean was coming to the studio and taking the classes that I was teaching, whether it was, power flow or a vinyasa class. And then I started getting pretty busy about what it would be like to adapt the class and really make the class, I would say, just something that I provide more options and more variations, and provide different, our adaptive classes and our chair classes, our basics, our gentle. They're appropriate for anyone with different mobility.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that was a theme there. Or is a theme at the studio still. Definitely. So how's it going? So you had to close temporarily, or at least the physical space.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, we're Pennsylvania based, and we have been, I would say that, we've been impacted with this really since March 1st is when we started talking about it. I actually, my last training for the adaptive yoga program was March 6th through 8th. And so that's very much burned in my mind because that's the last weekend that we were open. So our governor requested that businesses, non-essential businesses, close. And so we did that on March 12th. And so we have been seeking ways to support our community in that, this interim time period. And we've always had an online, not always, but for the last several years, we've had an online studio. So, gratefully we have, we partner, NavaStream is our provider with that. We have a studio that we already had over 100 classes in this library. And, we're a community-based yoga studio. We have 50 plus classes on our schedule during the course of a week. And we're also out in schools and workplaces, et cetera. So having a pretty robust library of basics, chair, gentle, yin, restorative, yoga nidra, as well as vinyasa and power flow, slow flow, functional flow, sort of the gamut of the yin and the yang practices we had a catalog of those classes. So we felt, good in offering that, but we also recognized that people really needed a place to just land and process in this interim period.
So the online classes you had previously were all recorded, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. And you had created that, why? Just to create more accessibility and
Yeah, it was largely about accessibility, and it's everything from people who may not be able to make it to the studio to the price point is definitely different online versus coming into the physical space, and so it's more economical for someone perhaps, and then it just gives people more choice, and so it isn't uncommon that we have some of our frequent members who come to the studio may also supplement their classes with an at-home practice and pull up one of their favorite teachers and styles at home. This has just been a massive shift.
And how did, when you closed the studio, the physical studio, did you increase the online classes that you've offered and offered live classes?
Yeah, so what we did a couple of things, and what really was important to us first was pause and not rush into anything.
Yeah.
It felt really important to just take a moment and take a breath. And it's, these are these things that we talk about a lot of times, and we talk about them in our practice. Before you rush into the next posture, can you just pause and sort of land here and ground? So we took some time to do that. Our approach has been to provide a class that is, I would say, a class that really holds space for people to allow them to land, process, breathe. And so every day we're doing a community class, and we've been calling them our community care classes. And they're in response to this current crisis. And there's always going to be some breath work. There's always going to be some meditation. There's always going to be some movement. We've landed them at noon Eastern time, which has actually worked out really beautifully. We have some folks on the West Coast who are joining us for a morning practice. We have a woman in France who joins us. It's her evening practice. But it's a daily class that happens live. And it's either myself teaching it or my partner, Maura. And in addition to, the class itself that is typically about 50 minutes, we stay online for anyone who wants to hang out and chat. So typically, a lot of times if we're doing a class at the studio, we would do a check-in before of, just seeing how things are going. And this feels really important now. And the format that just seems to be working for us is we practice first, and then we'll hang out and have a discussion afterwards.
Wow. So you're offer one, so it's one a day.
It's one a day. Yeah.
One live class a day. And how about the other teachers? Did you have other teachers you must have, you said 50 classes a week. So how many teachers do you have there?
So we have about, with our whole team of, regular on the schedule, teaching off-site, and then workshops, we have about 25, 30 teachers. And, there's our teachers who are at the studio, as opposed to more of our off-site classes and doing more of our corporates or privates. There's a little bit more of a core group of, I'd say, maybe 12 to 15 teachers. We've stayed in conversation with them about, sort of what's next. And so we're working on it and planning more live offerings because we think that that's important. It's felt really important for us to stay grounded in this offering this noon class. And we want to give opportunity for our teachers to be more involved. We want to give opportunity for our students to connect with these teachers that they really love. But what I have to say, doing it slowly, I don't regret that at all, because there's just been so much that's happened in technology and safety and all of those things. So
I'm involved here at the Santa Barbara Yoga Center, and I've been helping them move online. And it was fast and it was a little hectic, but it's worked pretty well. Most of the classes actually moved from in-person to online. So most of the teachers did that. I think there's probably close to 20 of them now teaching online. there's a bunch of classes every day, but yeah, it's complicated with the technology and it keeps changing. Zoom has just changed its security settings so that now there's automatically passwords when you start the class. And so it is a lot to keep up with. And we had to train all the teachers and then train all the students. But since it's a pretty regular community of students and teachers, it was pretty much the same people that are attending the same teachers' classes anyway. And then some people who had left the area are able to attend as well, which is kind of nice. So in a way, some of them have grown a little. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. To me, that's been one of the biggest benefits is seeing these people, like I said, we've been around for 6 years. So you have this great studentship, and it's only natural, right? Folks may change jobs, their family situations may change, and so they may have moved away. And so now we're seeing being able to practice with those folks, which has been really, really fulfilling. And on these classes, for us to be able to monitor it, it's always been our priority that if you're a teacher, we want you to be able to teach. We don't want you to have to worry about, tech support or this or that. And we have, upwards of 140 people on these classes. So trying to navigate that sometimes is you'd need someone managing that. I think it'll shift for sure because as I said, these classes are free. Once we go to more of these live classes, like I said, equity is really important to us. So we'll be doing a tier-based pricing structure so that people can choose a pricing level that's appropriate for them.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest challenges I see right now with this move online, whether it's temporary or permanent or whatever, or semi-permanent for a few months. Is how do we charge and whether it's appropriate to charge. But it's nice to make it accessible for students by not charging, but for teachers, they need the income, and studios need the income to survive. So it's complex. I mean, tier-based pricing is a great way to do that. People can choose their level. Is that it?
Yeah. And I love how you bring up, it's like everybody has to thrive. So for us, when we make decisions, we look at our values at Yoga Home, and we look at who are different audiences that we're of service to. So we have to make decisions in a way that it's right for our students, our community, it's right for our teachers, it's right for our staff. And it's right for the owners and the studio and the future viability of the studio. There's quite a bit right now, and so if we have teachers. One of the conversations has been, well, what about a teacher who then takes their own classes online? Go, if you can do that, and that's something that's landing for you, and that's going to help you continue to support yourself, then do that, and then. We can support you in bringing a class through Yoga Home to do that, then great, let's do that also. But it has to be of service for the whole system. But
I want to talk about money more, actually, maybe we can go back to that. But I just was wondering about, I know you serve so many students with disabilities, and I'm just curious if some of those students have trouble accessing the online classes, do you think? Do they have access to this technology in the same way? Is it working are you able to reach those same students through these live classes, you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And what I've been hearing is it's a couple of things. So for most of our students who come as part of the adaptive program, they have been able to join. And they've been really appreciative of the class being something that you could do as a mat-based class. You could do it in a chair. So kind of whatever works for you. I love that we do screen share. And so I can see sometimes that it's a caregiver with someone supporting someone in these classes. So that's felt really important. And then the other piece of it is if they can't make it for that noon class, because the main thing I've heard is I just need more flexibility with my schedule. And that's when I say, okay, great, go to the online studio and just pull up one of the adaptive classes, or, we have a bundle. So it's like, here's the adaptive bundle. Even some tutorials on there that makes it a little bit more accessible. But for the most part, I've heard from people that, yes, they have the technology. The biggest barrier that they may have is same thing as coming to the studio, where just funds might be an issue in terms of coming for classes. So,
and do you have thoughts about kind of like the ongoing, like if this goes on for longer, like, I mean, our theme here is to serve a studio-based community, but what happens if this goes on for 3 more months or something where we can't really meet? I mean, who knows how long it'll be, but I'm just saying, what if it's 3 months? And I don't know if you can share about it, but can the studio afford to remain open? Can your teachers, will they make any money? Like, I'm just concerned about this going on. I guess what I'm feeling is that, like, there's kind of this short-term issues, and maybe this is what you're doing in terms of taking time, like you said. I appreciate that, to look at. But I feel like a lot of the things that have happened recently are just like these quick fixes.
Yeah.
And I'm just concerned about the longer term situation here.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I think we all are, right?
Yeah, I know. But like for yoga studios in general, like what do you, I mean?
Well, here's my, gosh, I think like my biggest takeaway on this, and there are like different schools of thought and different camps on it, but I'm probably a little bit in that camp of the system overall, and the way that the yoga industry was set up may not have been the best way that is sustainable for lots of people, period.
Right.
And so, and I think that it's something that we've been having conversation with, in accessible yoga and some other communities, of what equity looks like and how it feels for studio owners. Our conversation at the accessible yoga conference in New York, where we really talked about the strategic planning piece of it, and where where is the revenue coming from, and what are the opportunities to really change a little bit of the dynamic of studio teachers, students. And so I think that this is that giant pause button, right? To say, what is it that really makes sense? So as a studio owner, I know what my responsibility is to pay my rent. I know what my responsibility is to pay my team members, both my staff and our teachers. And it's something that I take really seriously. So for sure, I'm grateful for some of the programs that have been provided. And I think that that's something that studio owners can do, is applying for things like the PPP. If there are other grants, there are some grants that are available, and it's really been varying state by state in terms of what's available. But I think that if studio owners, and I recognize it's also not in everybody's wheelhouse to say, I know how to apply for grants. And yet everybody has some shifting skill sets at this point. So
are your teachers contractors?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about PPP. I just applied myself. So it's on my mind, and I think probably a lot of people are working on it today, if they haven't already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know neither of us are experts in that, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. I don't even know what does it stand for again? Payroll Protection Program.
Correct.
PPP, Payroll Protection Program, and that's part of the CARES Act that the federal government launched to help mostly cover payroll expenses for small businesses, this PPP program. But it can also be used for independent contractors individually who want to apply for, are they calling it a loan, to cover their own lost work. But for studios or other yoga businesses, we can apply as small businesses, and you can apply for 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. Mm-hmm. But that wouldn't cover your independent contractors that you paid. Is that correct? No, just correct. Your salaried workers.
Just salaried workers, correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, we have a full-time studio manager at Yoga Home. And, we definitely want to continue her employment. We've been trying to work. I handle the way that, Maura and I sort of share the business. Maura handles more of the programmatic elements, and I tend to handle more of the business operations and administration. So I've been working with a lot of our teachers on everything from what unemployment looks like and how they might tap into that, and other resources that might be available to them, including this.
Right.
And
Right. So unemployment's important too, to mention that
yeah,
independent contractors can apply for unemployment and get supposedly are covered now, which in the past we wouldn't have been.
right. I think there are a couple of things that I'm really grateful that they did, the changes that they made in the unemployment, the way that it's being structured. One is that independent contractors are eligible. Two is they waived the waiting period. Three, they've waived the need to prove that you're out seeking other employment. And then the other thing they did that is really helpful for businesses is they've done away with the fee that would be assessed to businesses if team members collect unemployment. So previously, if someone had collected unemployment, then the business does get their rates go up significantly the next year. So that going away, that is very helpful. So
they've also increased, supposedly they've increased unemployment payments too, like that you're supposed to get an additional $600 on top of what you would normally get. Is that correct? I mean, not that you
don't know the full answer to that. I know that there's the calculator that you can use, but that's kind of where we've been directing people.
I know we're not experts in those, but I think it's important to mention because I do think those are important ways that studios can survive this time and yoga teachers as well. Hopefully, you know, especially when there's no in-person classes happening at all. Okay, so there was a couple of comments, questions for you. So Mary Sims, who's also a board member, said, she said, connecting with care providers has been essential for our all ability students. So I think referring to the conversation we were having before about your students with disabilities, that working with care providers is essential.
Supporting the care providers. You know, one of the first things we did in addition to these daily classes is, you know, did a yoga for caregivers class. It's, you know, the caregivers are really needing some extra support right now. So anything we can do in terms of helping them out.
Yeah, because a lot of care providers now have no break. I assume if you're home with if you have a family member who you take care of, you don't have, or possibly don't have anyone coming in to give you a break. You're on 24 hours a day.
Yes.
I mean, that must be exhausting.
And I will tell you, this is all like, it's so multi-layered and complex and tender, right? So, you know, Sean passed away, and I am definitely struck with what my experience would be like right now if Sean were still here. Because I definitely wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. You know, I would be a 24/7 caregiver. And so, you know, my hope is that as there are opportunities for, you know, parents and their children to connect together, or, you know, we also have a lot of adults caring for their aging adults, aging parents, and being able to provide practices that they can do together is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I had my father passed away in December, and you know, I was just thinking how, in a way, this would be so hard for him. Like, it would be so complicated and so difficult right now to be supporting his care. He didn't live with me, but you know, it would have just been a big drain on my family and emotionally exhausting. So I know people that are caring for older family members or anyone or young children right now, it's especially challenging. I have teenagers, which is one thing, but it's not like younger children who need, you know, constant supervision or, I mean, it just must be, yeah, I can't imagine right now being home all the time with them. That would be overwhelming with no support. Okay, I have more questions. So Mary also asked, what are your thoughts on virtual packages for studios?
Virtual packages for studios. So is there more on that, or?
Well, I think what she's talking about, no, but I think she's talking about having students buy packages for live virtual classes. That's what we've done at the Santa Barbara Yoga Center. We actually decided to charge just slightly less than the normal prices because we felt that and explain to our students that the goal is to support the teachers.
Yeah.
And actually, most people were completely understanding and like so happy to pay because they get what's going on. We had one person who like wrote, like, I can't believe you're charging when everything online is free. And it's like, well, but that's not the point. Of course there's a lot online free, but you have to understand, like, this is yoga teachers' way to survive. And by paying for a yoga class, you actually support their ability to pay their rent and eat,
Yeah.
and support their family. So to me, I feel like it's not unusual or incorrect to ask people to pay for online classes, especially live ones. Like, I guess where I'm shifting is trying to differentiate more between, I mean, you can charge for recorded ones too, obviously, but especially live classes, I think that you have that teacher there with you. And that feels very much like closer to the experience you were having in a studio.
Yeah, rather than being recorded. I will say, I think that there's been so much conversation with this. And, I really hope that the yoga community can move forward with this in allowing that maybe there can be differences of opinion and allowing space for each teacher and each business owner needs to make a decision that works best for them and their community. And so what I will say is I recognize that there is a lot of fear that's running through everybody right now, and it's showing up and manifesting different ways. And the fear comes from health issues, and the fear also comes from economic challenge. And so I think that as we move deeper into this and as the time extends, I don't think it's sustainable to ask, to be continuing to offer free classes forever. And there are tons of resources that are out there. But I think that what I'm hearing people are really craving, it's two things. One is the connection with the teachers that they know and trust. So yes, I know that I can get lots of classes on, free somewhere, but I don't know that teacher. So people are looking for that connection with the teachers that they trust. And then the second thing is they are looking for more of a live experience. So, and at the same time, people are like, I just want to do a vinyasa class with you or a power flow class with you. So that recorded class works great. Because there are some common themes that just always resonate, right? Yeah.
Okay, another comment. My concern are my students who don't have online access. These students are low-income elderly with challenged mobility and dementia. I taught them in a senior daycare facility.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I was texting with Kerri Sims, who's involved with accessible yoga, and he teaches in facilities like that primarily. That's pretty much all he does. And he said that all he could offer was videos of classes he had taught to give to the center that they could play on a computer screen or a TV for the people to participate in if they chose to. So at least it would be a video of him. So at least and he could even zoom in probably if someone at the center was able to connect with the technology. But it's hard to connect with individual students in a setting like that. I don't really see how it's possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you have to go through the center with that. We have a similar situation where we don't work with as many centers like that, but more schools, and it's definitely going through the administration to be able to have them be the outlet to push it out to the students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was from Melanie Jones. I think she says hi to you.
Oh, Melanie.
Okay, so that was all the comments so far. I don't know if there's other questions maybe people can ask them. But I guess I just want to keep going with maybe just a few more minutes. Maybe we could just talk like 5 more minutes about, I don't know. I don't want you to predict the future, but just like, what do you think in a positive way that could happen? You said like there's a pause here. How could we move forward? I don't know if it's a fair question, but if you have any creative ideas about what the future might hold for yoga studios and yoga communities. I mean, to me, I would just say what's so important about yoga studios is that community that they build and that they create. And I think for so many people, that becomes like a second family, like a spiritual family or community. I think it's replaced a lot of religious gatherings that people have had before in churches. I think people now go to yoga, and that's where they're yoga friends. And I know as a longtime teacher, like many students would come back to see their friends. That's why they come.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to see that go away. I mean, I'm afraid we're going to see a lot of studios closing, and I'm just concerned about yeah, what that'll mean for the actual communities.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is, I do think it's concerning. And, Maura and I talk about it. What is the reality, and how long are we able to sort of sustain moving forward with this? That's why I'm just grateful for, economic measures that allow us to have a little bit of breathing room. And then I'm really grateful, there are some angel benefactors out there who say, you know what, well, can I cover your Zoom costs this month? Can I cover the cost of someone else? And I think that that's where this tiered pricing comes in, because not all of our students are going to be able to afford some of these online classes. And I think that that also gives me hope for what it's like when we come back. My hope is that we take some of these things that we're experiencing now and bring them back into the live studio, our physical space as well. So, we have we've always felt very much an integrity around our pricing at Yoga Home, that it feels fair and reasonable for all parties. And I think that for some of our workshops and specialty programs, trainings, we've done some sort of a tiered model and some scholarship work, but I think that there's room for us to even be pushing it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. My other thought is actually around working with landlords. Like, I feel like there's an opportunity here to do some negotiating. So I just am concerned for yoga studios when usually the rent is the largest, well, rent and then staff, charges, like payroll. I know that there was something in the PPP that you could use for rent, I believe. And there's another program, the EIDL, economic injury, disaster loans. And I believe somewhere in there's some rental, you could cover some rent. But I also feel like negotiating with landlords is a big piece here that studios will have to do. So I hope people are willing to do that, to reach out to landlords and explain. I would think at this point, landlords would be very understanding.
Yeah. We're really lucky. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what? You're lucky you have a good landlord.
We have our landlady was just awesome. And she, applied for a loan right away and did get approved. And here's what I'll say though. Loans are great. Grants are better. My husband's in banking. He says, you're good, grants are better.
Grants are better. Well, with the PPP and maybe the EIDL, I'm not sure, but with the PPP payroll protection program, if you sustain your level of employees, it becomes a grant. Then you don't have to repay it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of detail there that I don't understand, but basically it's not necessary. It moves from a loan into a grant, I believe.
Yeah.
If you're sustaining.
And I think it feels to me this is a time to really be in integrity. And so making sure that the choices that we're making, we're doing it in a way that we lay our heads on the pillow at night and say, yep, I didn't just follow the letter of the law to be able to do it. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Right. And so those funds really are to be used for payroll. And you can use some of it towards rent and other things, but it's going to be really important to use that for payroll.
Yeah.
But, and I like work out a payment plan with just to help with cash flow right now is key.
Work out a payment plan with what?
Anyone.
With anyone. Yeah.
Your utilities, if you're doing any sort of constant contact or marketing, if you have, your Facebook advertising, anything that you're doing, we really quickly reach out to everybody to just say what sort of payment options are available to us. Because please don't just put it on a credit card and say, I'll deal with it later.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I also like what you said about angel benefactors. I think angel benefactors often come when you ask. I feel like reaching out to your community and actually explaining what you're dealing with is important. So I think sometimes it's hard as a business owner to ask for help because you're usually the one that's in the position of helping. And maybe that's just a personality trait. But I know it can be hard for people who own a business to actually ask for the people that they serve to support them. Yeah. But I think in this moment, most yoga students understand that studios are in peril. I mean, literally, like I think if this goes on for months longer, many studios probably won't be able to stay open. And so for those studio owners to reach out to their communities and ask for support somehow could be really important too.
Yeah, I would agree.
Any last thoughts for us? Okay.
I hope that everybody recognizes the work that they're doing and just how valuable it is, because our communities are moving through so much trauma. And so every time that we give them an opportunity, even if it's just for a few moments to breathe, it's so critically important. So I hope everybody can at least find a little bit of comfort in that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here today, and good luck with Yoga Home.
Thank you.
Let me know if there's anything I can do to support you.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.